Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
Sadly, Harry Carey will not be here today.
No Carey Carey.
I'd settle for Bob Uecker. He was
I went back and listened to that episode. All right, so we're going to kick the rust off and say welcome back to Cinema Chop Shop. It's been far, far too long since our last episode, which I do believe our two guests were on the episode. We're welcoming back to the show Joey Poole.
Hello.
And Todd.
What up?
And, of course, I'm your host, Shawn, the Brewboss. We're right in the thick of baseball season, and Joey and I were chatting about just how good some of the teams are this year, how bad some of the other teams that you would expect to be good are in Major League Baseball. And I said, let's do a baseball episode. We've done one in the past, but this one is going to be a little different. We're going to do a bracket-style Sweet 16 tournament of baseball films. When we talked about doing it, I kind of picked out 32 well-known baseball movies and sent them Joey's way, and I said, pick 16 that you like, and then we'll make a bracket out of it. And then, Joey, you had the great idea of using Rotten Tomatoes scores to seed these against one another. That way it's completely fair. You and I weren't stacking the deck or anything. And this, of course, was before Todd had agreed to come on to the episode. But we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to talk about 16 well-known and maybe some that aren't so well-known baseball films. Put them up head-to-head against each other. And
Well, I will add, too, some of the ones that I called down and from my 16 from your original 32 weren't necessarily movies that I liked. Some of them were movies that either A, I really wanted to watch, or B, I thought probably based on what I knew about them might deserve to be here for whatever reason, which we'll talk about as we get into the seedings, I guess.
The other thing that kind of got this whole episode idea started, I was telling you the story about when I was a child and played Little League. I was the only left-hander in my entire town of 8,000 people, or however many it was. And so, as a result, they didn't know how to pitch me, so I never had to swing the bat. I just walked a lot. So my on-base percentage was probably crazy high, but my batting average had to have been like a 0.002 or something, because it wasn't until my second year in Little League that my dad started paying me to swing the bat. So every time I swung, I got a quarter. Every time I fouled a ball, I got 50 cents. Every time I got a hit, I got $1. And so,
Billy Bean would have loved you then.
Yeah.
Whereas his scouts would have hated you.
Yeah, exactly. So I had once I had the incentive, I started to really get into baseball. We do have a lot of baseball to talk about today. So we're going to dive right in, and we're going to try to get this first round knocked out in the first half of the episode. Just real quickly, we're going to run down the films that we're going to go head-to-head against in our bracket. Our number one seed, and of course, again, this is by Rotten Tomatoes, we've got Bull Durham, and it's going head-to-head against Beer League from 2006. The Bad News Bears, 1976, is our number 2 seed against Rookie of the Year from 1993. Major League is going head-to-head with The Natural. The movie 61, Asterisk, from 2001, is going head-to-head with A League of Their Own from 1992. Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars, and Motor Kings from 1976 will go head-to-head against The Sandlot from 1993. Moneyball from 2011 will go head-to-head against The Babe from 1992. Field of Dreams from 1989 will go head-to-head with Cobb from 1994. And then lastly, we will have 8 Men Out from 1988 going head-to-head with 42 from 2013. Anything else we want to say about these before we go jumping into their matchups?
Everything I want to say about the seedings, I think, will come out in the discussion of the film.
Yeah.
So I vote we jump right in.
Yeah, there were some fortuitous seedings, and then there were some really unfortunate seedings.
Some of you really into this genre may have heard some of that and been like, what? So we'll unpack that as we go along.
Yeah. All right, so we're up at the top of the bracket. We're going to go against Bull Durham, 1988 film. It is a story of a fan who has an affair with one minor league baseball player each season. She meets an up-and-coming pitcher and the experienced catcher assigned to him. It is written and directed by Ron Shelton, and it stars, of course, Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon, and Tim Robbins. Against that, we're going to be talking about Beer League from 2006. An unemployed slacker inspires his softball teammates to improve their game so they won't get kicked out of the local league. Directed by Frank Sebastiano, written by Frank Sebastiano and Artie Lang, starring Artie Lang, Ralph Macchio, and Anthony DeSando. Familiar with one. I have not seen another.
I'm here to say that you haven't missed a whole lot by not seeing Beer League. It deserves its 16 seed. It's a very typical kind of lowbrow, middlebrow comedy.
Vehicle. Yeah, if you know anything about Artie Lang's comedy, lowbrow. I'm going to be the anti-PC guy. He really leans into that in the movie. It should be noted, Ralph Macchio delivers perhaps the worst effort to appear drunk that I've ever seen in a film. So it might be worth watching just to witness that.
Yeah, it rides that whole not so lovable loser shtick of Artie Lang's really hard. Doesn't get anywhere. I think I speak for all three of us when I say that this one is pretty clearly going to Bull Durham.
Yeah. Let's talk about Bull Durham real quickly. We've covered it on the show before, but regarded as one of the best baseball, if not one of the best sports films made. I mean, it's
Sports Illustrated, I think, on a list of the top 100 sports films, put Bull Durham number one several years back. So it's oftentimes not just at the top of the baseball lists, but the sports lists as well.
The one thing I've liked about Bull Durham all along is that unlike a lot of baseball films, it's not too wrapped up in sentimentality. It is a pretty pessimistic or cynical film, I think, and that is refreshing when you kind of look at the big body of work that we had to choose from for baseball movies. I think it's kind of incidental that we're talking about baseball. It's more about the human interactions, the relationships, the some dishonesty and some, that kind of thing plays a bigger role, which I think leads into why Bull Durham is a superior film, especially in this case.
Yeah, and certainly the one thing that's interesting is the Kevin Costner character, the protagonist Crash, is not your typical protagonist who is either the up-and-comer or usually if it's the old lion, he's going to have that one last moment of glory, which I guess Crash sort of has at one point. Like he breaks the minor league record for home runs, right? But then it turns out that's kind of fortuitous. When he breaks that record, no one notices that he breaks the record, and
that's not a great record to have either.
And it's not. It means that you were in the minor leagues.
You were pretty good for a long time. Yeah.
And he's trying to, and in this hot shot played by Tim Robbins comes up that is clearly going places, and Crash has to kind of reckon with that. He ends up kind of helping him out, but at first it's really hard for him. He calls him meat.
So many of these movies mythologize men who are very, very good at what is essentially a child's game, and this one kind of does something different, which is it shows the sort of warts and all realities of these guys who can't quite make it. I mean, I know Tim Robbins' character does make it to the big leagues, but you have Crash kind of stalled there.
Well, if you want to look at the victory for the protagonist in this one, it's not his victory, or it is his victory, but it's he gets it vicariously by helping out, because it's his advice essentially that helps push Meat. I can't even remember his real name, but that character helped him to improve, and there's some great scenes in there where he just wants to throw the fastball, and then Crash is trying to get him to throw a curveball, and he finally, when Meat refuses to throw anything but the fastball, Crash just goes to there and says he's throwing a fastball.
Yep,
and knocks it off the bull.
He screws him over, and that he learned the lesson.
Yeah.
All right, so pretty much clear that the first matchup we're going with Bull Durham.
This one's not close. Yeah. Skunk rule, call it in the fifth inning. The Bull Durham batted through the order twice before they got an out. All
right, so let's go across the bracket, and unfortunately, we've got two children movies, but one certainly I think is more all age appealing, and we're talking about 1976's The Bad News Bears. An aging, down on his luck ex-minor leaguer coaches a team of misfits in an ultra-competitive California Little League. Directed by Michael Ritchie, written by Bill Lancaster, starring Walter Matthau, Tatum O'Neal, and Vic Morrow. This movie's great. It's a lot of fun. You get to see kids smoking and drinking. What else can you say about the 70s?
Right.
What the funny story I have about this movie is that I saw this movie at church.
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
I'm pretty sure I did too.
They would have like Valentine's banquets or whatever for the adults, and they would just throw us in the upstairs Sunday school room with a movie. And we watched Kroll the Conqueror one year.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, we watched Beastmaster. I think.
My gosh!
And then this one, yeah, I don't think anybody really thought about what they were showing us, and just here's a movie.
Isn't there nudity in Beastmaster, if I recall?
I think so. Tanya Roberts, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the one that we saw was a copy of one that had been taped off of TBS or something.
More concerning is the fact that you're dealing with some pagan shit going on there. That's wild. We're taking that one head to head with Rookie of the Year from 1993. When an accident miraculously gives a boy an incredibly powerful pitching arm, he becomes a major league pitcher for the Chicago Cubs. This was directed by Daniel Stern, written by Sam Harper, starring Thomas Ian Nicholas, Gary Busey, Albert Hall, and Daniel Stern. Clearly a kid's movie. I talked to our absent co-host Chelsea about this. She loved this film as a child. She said she loved hearing the sound that his arm made when it ratchets back for throwing. Really a silly movie, though. Daniel Stern's character, I think, is probably one of the strangest choices I've ever seen. Really not funny, but I think maybe to a 4 or 5 year old he's funny.
Well, I agree with Chelsea. I saw this movie, and I actually owned a VHS copy of it when I was 12, 13, whenever it came out, and so I've actually seen it quite a few times for that reason. And like her, I do have some nostalgia surrounding it. I mean, obviously Bad News Bears is going to win here, but I think the Daniel Stern character definitely is more appealing to a 12-year-old's comedic sensibility.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I think Daniel Stern, I would be surprised if you asked him if he wouldn't admit that he's trying to channel his inner Jerry Lewis, because that's very much the type of act he's going with that character, kind of a Jerry Lewis sort of stick.
It should be noted that the manager of the baseball team of the Chicago Cubs was the boat captain from Apocalypse Now.
Oh.
Also, the first baseman on the Chicago Cubs is the actor who played janitor on Scrubs. And the cute girl in the class that he had the crush on later went on to become a chef. She is a chef, but was one of these celebrity chefs. She was like one of those chef competition shows.
Oh,
so she's doing very well for herself.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to award this one to Bad News Bears. Any objections?
No, there's nothing wrong with Rookie of the Year. It's fine as a kid's movie.
Yeah, it's a kid's movie.
But yeah, I think Bad News Bears clearly
it has a broader
iconic.
appeal.
I think Bad News Bears achieves that thing where a kid can watch it and get a kick out of it, and grown-ups can watch it and enjoy it for a different reason.
It does get pretty dark, though.
Yeah.
He's not just a curmudgeon. He's an alcoholic. He passes out on the field at one point.
He verbally abuses the Tatum O'Neal
character.
in the dugout, basically.
Mm-hmm.
He called her a little shit or something like that, or she was trying to hang out with him, get him to hang out with her outside of baseball, and he was like, "Look, I don't want to hang out with you."
Yep.
But yeah, clearly the better. Better. So.
All right, we're going to move on. We're going to hit the number 8 and number 9 seeds. We're right in the middle of the bracket. It's 1989's Major League. The new owner of the Cleveland Indians puts together a purposely horrible team so they'll lose, and she can move the team. But when the plot is uncovered, they start winning just to spite her. Written and directed by David S. Ward, starring Tom Berenger, Charlie Sheen, Corbin Burnson, Wesley Snipes, Bob Uecker, Rene Russo, and Dennis Haysbert. That's all state stand.
I rewatched it and The Natural last night. I don't know that Major League holds up as well for me, comedy-wise, on the viewing now. I remembered it being funnier than what I found at this time. I can't really put my finger on what I mean, like, they have the voodoo
Jumbo.
player. Right.
No, Serrano.
Serrano, right.
He worshipped Jumbo.
Right. And then he has the conflict with the Christian character. They had the rich guy who's, kind of only, halfway in it at the beginning of the movie, the Corbin Burnson character. They've got kind of the Crash type character with the old catcher.
Right. Tom
Berenger's character, right. I don't know. I mean, I can't put my finger on it. The humor just struck me as a little bit too lowbrow this time on it. I enjoyed it. I'd have to say, but I didn't find myself like cracking up like I kind of thought that I would to the extent that I thought either.
I'll preface what I'm going to say by the fact that I did not have a chance to rewatch this one, although I have seen it multiple times, and it wasn't too terribly long ago that I watched it again. I was a bit dismayed at this particular matchup because I thought this was a difficult one to call because The Natural is, for me, the first time I'd ever watched it was a year or two ago when we did our first baseball movies episode, and I declared it a personal favorite at the time, if you remember, despite its flaws. So I was kind of shocked that it was a 9 seed coming in. I thought it may have been, higher, much higher than that.
The Natural has and both of these movies have an 83 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay,
so
and
they are perfectly matched with one another.
And Major League is, it is what it is, but as far as like that kind of like, lowbrow sports comedy, it's probably, in my memory anyway, and again, Todd, you've seen it more recently than I have, in my memory, it is the absolute top shelf of that genre.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So,
of the lowbrow, it
was a difficult matchup for me.
Well, we keep saying lowbrow for Major League. Now, granted, a lot of the humor is lowbrow, but the setup for the movie, the plot, is the exact same plot that was the setup for Ted Lasso.
And that's why it's much, much better than Beer League, for instance, which it doesn't have much to offer.
Well, and we could talk about this too, but The Natural has somewhat of a similar plot too. Not exactly the same, but similar in that it has an owner who's a shithead who's trying to sabotage his own team, his or her own team.
And for anybody who has not seen The Natural, we've talked about it on the show before. It's from 1984. It's a middle-aged unknown comes seemingly out of nowhere to become a legendary baseball player with almost supernatural talent. Directed by Barry Levinson, written by Bernard Malamud, Roger Town, and Phil Dusenberry. And it stars Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, and Glenn Close. I'm not the biggest fan of The Natural. I find it to be a little too overly sentimental, and the melodrama is thick.
So this is interesting, comparing the film with the Bernard Malamud's original novel, which I've actually read. It's a pretty faithful adaptation up until the end. Mm-hmm. So he gets shot by a woman at the beginning of the film. It sidetracks his career. All that same stuff kind of happens in the novel. The difference, though, is that at the end, when the gamblers come in, Roy Hobbs actually falls for the temptation in the novel. And decides at the last second in the novel that he doesn't want to do it, but ends up failing anyway. He doesn't hit the classic home run. So it's kind of a downer ending. And what the novel, I think, is trying to get at is the way in which America builds up its heroes into these mythological characters and then tears them down. And the movie is, heading in kind of a similar direction, but of course it goes for more of the feel-good sort of ending where it again diverges from the novel is when he's not tempted at all by the gamblers, won't take their money, and then of course
he's a paragon of virtue.
And I think that might lend itself somewhat to what you're saying. And I actually had this discussion with Joey that I do think that's a little bit of a flaw in the movie. Its thematic consistency is thrown off by that, because in the novel it's got that arc that I just mentioned. Whereas in this one it seems to be heading in that direction of tearing down the myth, but at the end it actually just leans into it. But watching it last night, I actually had less of a problem, because I think if there's one genre in which sentimentality is okay, it is in the sports
and baseball
genre, and the baseball genre.
Yeah, we'll hit on some other sentimental ones coming up.
And look, you couldn't have made a movie where at the end the hero takes, is on the take, and then strike. You just couldn't have a Hollywood film that did that. And so it makes sense that they changed it in the way that they did, but I didn't have as much of a problem with it watching it again, because leaning into the mythology and creating that sort of mythological character, versus, and if they match up later, this will be interesting to talk about, but the realism of Bull Durham. But anyway.
All right. Well, then let's take a vote then, Joey.
I've declared The Natural a personal favorite. I'm riding it for a while.
Sticking to it.
The Natural.
All right, I'm voting for Major League. I'm overruled, so The Natural will move on.
It hurts me a little bit that Major League didn't make it out of the first round.
Unfortunate seeding.
Had it.
Unfortunate seeding.
There are a lot of movies here that it would have beaten, but this is not one of them for me.
If sequels were point getters, then the Major League would get points just for having a couple of sequels. There were no natural sequels. It must not have been that good.
Yep.
The Natural 2.
I had completely forgotten about Major League 2 as well until after I watched it last night. I saw it on the,
And then Major League back in training or back in the minors.
I watched all
There's
three
like
of
three
those in the same weekend a while back. But,
Moving on, we're going to talk about 61 asterisk 2001. Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle race to break Babe Ruth's single-season home run record. Directed by Billy Crystal, written by Hank Steinberg, starring Barry Pepper, Thomas Jane, and Anthony Michael Hall. Going head-to-head with A League of Their Own, 1992, two sisters joined the first female professional baseball league and struggled to help it succeed amid their growing rivalry. Directed by Penny Marshall, written by Kim Wilson, Kelly Candale, Lowell Gans, and starring Tom Hanks, Gina Davis, Lori Petty, Madonna, and Rosie O'Donnell. Go.
Well, you said when we talked about this via text that you had things to say about 61, so if I'm saying the same thing, stop me. But this is Yankees fan fiction, and as such, it's not terrible. I actually enjoyed it for the most part. I didn't know much about the Mantle-Maris chase for 61, so having that backstory was interesting. I'm pretty sure I got a somewhat whitewashed version of that backstory, because this movie does not go for like a warts and all kind of, realism, but it does show the darker side of Mantle's character especially. And I find it interesting to note that even in Yankees fan fiction depicts Yankees fans as pieces of shit.
Yeah.
So that was what I found most noteworthy about it.
For years, I've listened to Billy Crystal talk about the fucking Yankees, and this I call this Billy Crystal edging himself
for 2.5 hours.
He must have had a box of Kleenex stuck to the director's chair, because this guy was jerking himself off the whole fucking film. First of all,
there's a lot of kind of homoerotic stuff in the movie.
Oh,
too.
yeah, totally. Low production.
Boy, the bromance between Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris. Come on.
There's very low production value at the beginning of the film when we're in the modern day part. I was like, is this like a made for TV movie?
No, it looks like a Lifetime movie.
It is an HBO Productions, but there's some awful green screens of them at Yankee Stadium that are pretty bad. Thomas Jane's awful hair dye job as Mickey Mantle. Oh, it was bad. Okay, Shooter McGavin, the actor's name escapes my mind. He played Mel Allen, the announcer for the Yankees, and his impression was terrible. Like he's at like a higher octave register on his reads. And Mel Allen's more like, how about that? And he's like, how about that? And I was like, this is awful. This is terrible.
He was no Bob Uecker, if we're comparing.
Yeah, right.
Who we didn't mention for Major League. But,
So I did not enjoy 61, and it is the higher seed in this.
Yeah, that was shocking.
Based on the Rotten Tomatoes, it's got an 86. A League of Their Own has an 81. I think A League of Their Own is a fantastic film. It passes the what are we? Was it the Bechdel test?
Definitely. Which is not many movies on this list are going to do that.
Exactly. It is a fantastic female affirming film in and of itself. You've got one of Tom Hanks' great performances, Lori Petty and Gina Davis. You didn't like it?
Well, we'll talk about this because it's gonna go to the next round, right?
I'm gonna vote for the League of Their Own.
Me too. So it's going to the next round. We'll talk about that as it goes forward.
So we will jump on over and we'll get deeper into that film.
This was one last thing. This was the very first time that I had seen A League of Their Own, which is shocking. And so maybe it's a recency bias, but like I don't want to give too much of my bracket away, but it's a dark horse here for me.
Okay.
Oh, shit.
Shocking that it came in as number 10.
This being a 10. Well, this is sort of the equivalent of like 20 years ago when Gonzaga started being good, and they were still like 10, 11 seeds, and were like ups and like kill like the 7th. This was kind of the equivalent of that.
What critics didn't like this movie enough to put it as the 10th overall seed.
I don't know.
Like that just I find it shocking.
We got a lot of men who don't like women apparently. All right, so jumping down into the bottom part of the brackets, we've got number 4, Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings from 1976. Tired of the slave-like treatment of his team's owner, charismatic star, Negro League pitcher Bingo Long takes to the road with his band of barnstormers through the small towns of the Midwest in the 1930s. Directed by John Badham, written by William Brashler, Hal Barwood, and Matthew Robbins, starring Billy D. Williams, James Earl Jones, and Richard Pryor. This was new for both of you?
I had never even heard of Bingo Long.
Yeah,
before.
Also, it's completely new for me, too. The name rang a bell for some reason, and it's because you guys had talked about it previously, but I had never seen it, didn't know anything about it.
I didn't know a thing about it.
This is, for me, the most fucked up seeding in the entire tournament, because The Sandlot, for better or for worse, is an absolutely just iconic kids movie, baseball, sports film, and it's coming in as the 13 seed?
Yeah, 13 seed. We've got a where are we on? A 65 on Rotten Tomatoes.
So that made it difficult, and whichever one comes out of this one has Field of Dreams lurking in the second round. So,
Possibly.
Well,
don't give anything away.
Okay, but I feel like either one of these movies with different seating could have made a run. I struggled with this one.
All right. Well, let's talk about Sandlot real quick, and then we'll get into some of the virtues of these. The Sandlot, 1993. In the summer of 1962, a new kid in town is taken under the wing of a young baseball prodigy and his rowdy team, resulting in many adventures. Directed by David Mickey Evans, written by David Mickey Evans and Robert Gunter, starring Tom Guidry, Mike Vitar, Art LaFleur. That's the guy that plays Babe Ruth, by the way, and he plays another baseball player in another film in our pool. James Earl Jones and Patrick Renna as Ham. I'll go ahead and just say some of the things I like, and I'm going to let you guys duke it out. I've always liked The Sandlot. It's got some of the most iconic lines in films.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Patrick Renna to this day looks exactly like he did when he was a kid, and he seems like a really good-natured guy. He's very big on social media. James Earl Jones, in both of these films, playing two completely different characters at different stages in his life. The Sandlot really captures that early 60s kind of Wonder Years kind of feel. If you like that kind of genre, this definitely epitomizes that. But then you've got Bingo Long, which really talks about a part of our history that gets shuffled under the rug a little bit. And it's a good point for me to mention, in this year's MLB The Show video game, they went out of their way to do a segment on the Negro Leagues, and there's an entire playable series with all these Negro League players, and each player gets his own video highlight from the curator of the Negro League Museum in Kansas City. And it's some beautiful archival footage and some great commentary. And Joey, I pointed this out to you when I first got the game.
It looks amazing.
I really hope that they release that footage as like a playable thing, like on YouTube or something, so you can just watch it for people who aren't into video games. But it's definitely a fun movie. Came out the same year as Bad News Bears. And it really talks about a part of baseball history that I think deserves its moment in the sun. Go at it, guys. What do you like better?
Well, let me say a little bit about The Sandlot first. This was another one that, shockingly, I had not seen until this week when I was prepping for the episode. And so all these years, I had no idea that You're Killing Me, Smalls, that was about s'mores. I had no idea the context of it. I knew the line, I knew where it came from, but I didn't know the context of it. And I didn't know that my favorite burger at a local burger bar establishment, the Windy Peppercorn, was named after the object of preteen lust in this movie. So the Sandlot's great. I mean, both of these movies are very good. Like I said, I struggled with this one. Do you want me to reveal my pick, or?
Sure, go ahead.
I struggled with it. I ultimately decided to go with Bingo Long. But this was bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, full count, Bingo Long bunts homer run to win. This one hurt my heart, and I feel like The Sandlot with a more accurate, better seating, could have made a run. But anyway, it didn't make it out of the first round.
Todd, what do you think?
Bingo Long had a tough row to hoe with me because The Sandlot, I was like the audience for that when it came out and saw it when it came out. I did rewatch it this week because I did want to give Bingo Long a fair hearing and say, okay, let me see what the flaws are here. And sure, I mean, it's not Sandlot certainly isn't a perfect movie. I do think I would compare it in some ways to The Natural, whereas The Natural has sort of an adult mythologizing of baseball. The Sandlot is kid mythologizing because I don't think we're meant to take, the young kid, the narrator is now like a baseball announcer and he's telling the story. I don't think we're meant to take this as realism, right? We're
sure.
like some of this didn't have. It's mythologizing.
It's idealized memory.
It's idealized mythologizing, and so I think it kind of fits in with The Natural in that sense, but also that nostalgic quality of like the Wonder Years type. The quality that you mentioned earlier, which I think again in the baseball sports genre is not only fine, but part of the recipe.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like A Christmas Story to me.
Yeah.
In some way, yeah. That's actually a good.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the Wonder Years. I mean, those are all in that same.
Yep. Yeah. And Bingo Long, I liked. It was. You're absolutely right. It covered kind of a part of baseball history that oftentimes isn't touched on. I felt like maybe sometimes the tone was just almost completely lighthearted. Like even when racist things were happening, it was handled in a lighthearted way. And so
it is a comedy, though.
I know, but yeah, I mean that's fair. It's fair. I'm just saying
are allowed to tackle heavy shit with comedy.
They are. Right. I didn't say they weren't allowed.
What's your vote?
I'm voting. So I'm voting for The Sandlot.
I'm voting for The Sandlot.
I respect that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I agonized over this one. Ultimately, I did have Bingo on my card, but I get that.
All right, moving right along, we're going to talk about Moneyball, number 3 seed, Moneyball, 2011. Oakland A's general manager Billy Beane's successful attempt to assemble a baseball team on a lean budget by employing computer-generated analysis to acquire new players. Directed by Bennett Miller, written by Steven Zalian, Aaron Sorkin, Stan Shervin, and starring Brad Pitt, Robin Wright, and Jonah Hill. Going head-to-head with 1992's The Babe, directed by Arthur Hiller, written by John Fusco, starring John Goodman, Kelly McGillis, Trini Alvarado, Bruce Boxleitner, and James Cromwell. And this, of course, is a biopic about the Babe Ruth. Who wants to go first on this?
Well, for me, Moneyball is, when I saw the list, that's definitely one of the ones that pops out at me first and foremost as being one of my, I won't say dark horses because it's obviously the 3rd seed, but I love this movie. And one of the things I like about it, first off, it offers something a little bit different from some of the other movies in that it gives you the behind-the-scenes look at how teams are put together. And what I think this movie does really well and why I love it so much is that sounds on the surface like something that's just like egghead baseball nerd type shit, but it's very skillfully put together in such a way that even someone who doesn't care about the statistics and the, on base percentages and all that stuff can still really get into it. I love the almost comedic relationship that develops between Billy Beane, played by Brad Pitt, and Peter Brand, played by Jonah Hill. I think it's one of Brad Pitt's best performances, maybe his best performance. I'm not a huge fan of his in general, but I love the way his performance in this because I think that he does get dark at times with his character. Yeah. Almost creepy in some ways. But then it's still a guy you can root for, so it doesn't go too far over the edge, I think. And so I just think it takes a subject matter that on the surface could turn off a lot of viewers in terms of its appeal and makes it very appealing. I love the score that's very understated. So I like a lot about it. So I won't take up too much more time.
Have you watched The Babe?
I watched The Babe. So I watched The Babe when it originally came out, so 30 some odd years ago. Okay. It didn't make a huge impression on me at the time. I revisited some highlights this week. I didn't honestly feel the need to really rewatch it. I know you said it's fresher in your mind, so maybe you can
I watched it this week, but
bit.
Joey, what do you have to say about either film?
I'll just echo everything Todd said about Moneyball. I agree with that 100%. The Babe, I revisited some highlights of it this week. Like Todd, I saw it years and years ago. I remember John Goodman's performance being okay. He looks like the Babe, and the performance, I don't remember anything wrong with the performance, but the movie was weird tonally.
The movie is the most baseball movie ever. It's really, like, the baseball scenes are so poorly done that I get that the Babe was kind of like a jovial guy, and he kind of he was good-natured, and baseball was just something he did, but it was almost like a Saturday Night Live sketch where it was just John Goodman with this weird, like, stroke face kind of and it was like he was disconnected from reality. It was really strange. But the scene where he's picked up from the orphanage by the Baltimore Orioles, it's an adult John Goodman with this goofy ass page boy wig on and a newsboy cap. I laughed out loud. I said, "You're fucking shitting me. This is the worst thing I've ever seen." The music was inappropriately assertive. I did not understand their choices there. There's some continuity errors that are pretty terrible in this film. Just shoddy. Everything you said about Moneyball, it's a cool, true story. Billy Beane's done it twice. He did it with the A's. He did it with the Red Sox.
Also noteworthy that this is a genre of movies that's with a lot of movies based on real things. But this is one of the few ones of, like, a front office.
Yeah.
One cool thing they did was they interspersed sometimes with the dramatization of certain scenes that happen with the real thing. So when Hatteberg hits the home run, which is the climactic moment of the film, they go back and forth between the actor, and he's a famous actor, and I can't recall his name, that played Hatteberg, that's from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Chris Pratt?
Yeah, so he plays Hatteberg in Moneyball. But anyway, they go back and forth they edit it back and forth between his reactions and then the real reaction from the actual home run that was hit. So I thought that was a cool sort of reminder to the audience that, hey, this actually happened. So, it's kind of sentimental in some ways, but also, hey.
All right, we're Moneyball all the way.
Yeah.
All right, takes us to number 5, Field of Dreams. We've talked about this on the show before. 1989, Iowa farmer Ray Kinsella is inspired by a voice that he can't ignore to pursue the dream he can hardly believe. Supported by his wife, Ray begins the quest by turning his ordinary cornfield into a place where dreams can come true. Directed by Phil Alden Robinson, writers W.P. Kinsella, Phil Alden Robinson. Starring Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones, Ray Liotta, Burt Lancaster, Amy Madigan, Tim Busfield, Frank Whaley, and Art LaFleur. Again, it's sappy, it's daddy worship, it's melodrama, it is what it is.
And goddamn it, I love it.
It's going head-to-head with 1994's Cobb. A writer hired to write the official biography of Ty Cobb discovers just how dark the baseball legend's real story is. Directed by Ron Shelton, written by Al Stump and Ron Shelton, starring Tommy Lee Jones, Robert Wall, and Lolita Davidovich. All right, I saw Cobb this week. Does anybody want to talk about it besides me?
It's you said that you, in particular, you did not like Tommy Lee Jones' portrayal of Cobb. You thought it was one note. I'm not going to disagree with that. I haven't seen it in years. I don't remember his performance being that bad, but what I do remember is that perhaps accurately, perhaps we get the technicolor version of it. Cobb is such an asshole that it makes this very, very difficult to watch, and it's just not an enjoyable experience at all.
My impression exactly. The first 20 minutes, I said, this is a hard-to-watch movie. I stopped. I came back to it. I watched another 10 minutes. I stopped. I came back to it. It took me the better part of a week to finish the film. There are some terrible photoshops of this with Tommy Lee Jones photoshopped into Ty Cobb's historic photographs. It's awful. Roger Clemens is in this movie. He is the opposing pitcher that Ty Cobb's taunting the whole time. There's some inconsistent age makeup. Anytime Tommy Lee Jones was wearing a hat, they didn't white his hair. It's like laziness. But the thing I have the problem with is that when Tommy Lee Jones is excellent at playing Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
He's great in The Fugitive. He's great in these movies where he's, No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But the minute you ask Tommy Lee Jones to ratchet it up just a little bit above his range, it becomes somebody play acting. It becomes a community theater person just becoming off the wall erratic. And it reminded me of his portrayal of Two-Face in the Batman movie that he was in. He's just outside himself. And that was the case here. It was hard to believe and hard to just enjoy. Besides that, Robert Wall, very well cast as a sports writer. I mean, it's Robert Wall. I mean, it's RLS.
And another one that keeps popping up in things. He was in Bull Durham.
Yeah,
it was in Bull Durham.
He lives in this world. Lolita Davidovich was wasted in this movie. I don't even know why she signed on. She was hardly featured, but that was Ty Cobb. But of course, Field of Dreams, we've talked about this on the show before. Anything you guys want to say about Field of Dreams besides?
One of my I love Field of Dreams. I watch it probably once a year, so that kind of gives you sort of a preview of where my vote may be going, although maybe not. But
I find it hard to believe that two writers / English professors would really like this movie.
I don't. So here's the thing. Usually sentimental would turn me off, and Joey has rolled his eyes at me before at my love of sentimental inspirational sports movies. I'm sorry, I just love them. That's the one. Sports is the one arena where, hey, let's be sentimental. Let's
Field of Dreams is, to me, the ultimate Father's Day movie. It is it gets
Dad, you want to have a catch? I mean, how
it gets me every single time.
Every time.
I was going to say,
every time.
With Shawn, yeah, I agree with everything you said about it. It is overly sentimental, but any kind of like father-son shit, especially when it's couched in like, the nostalgia of the hazy glow of baseball, just reduces me to a fucking bucket of tears instantly every time.
When Burt Lancaster's character
I
crosses the line to save the daughter.
And he can't go back.
Oh, God, just heartbreaking. And then, of course, the thing about this is that you also, besides the film itself, looking at it in a historic lens, I mean, for God's sakes, Major League Baseball has started the Field of Dreams game.
And that was awesome. The first Field of Dreams game was amazing. A guy hit a walk-off home run into the corn.
The intro of the players coming out of the cornfield with Kevin Costner doing his thing.
Amazing.
I don't know if Kevin Costner will be back after his most recent little deals in the media, but anyway.
I do want to mention one thing, because I've read the novel, and so one thing I think is it's just a little tidbit, but one thing I think is interesting, the James Earl Jones character in the novel, it's actually J.D. Salinger.
Yes.
J.D. Salinger is
what? Really?
So J.D. Salinger is a character in the novel, essentially doing the James Earl Jones role. So the James Earl Jones character is a creation, I'm sure J.D. Salinger would have sued the shit out of him.
Of course.
But it's also a good call. It's a much better choice. I actually like the movie better than the novel.
So Field of Dreams is moving on.
Definitely.
All right.
100%.
All right, last bracket, and then we'll hit into intermission. We've got number 6, 8 Men Out from 1988, a dramatization of the Black Sox scandal when the underpaid Chicago White Sox accepted bribes to deliberately lose the 1919 World Series. Directed by John Sayles, written by Elliot Azonoff and John Sayles, starring John Cusack, Clifton James, Jace Alexander, John Mahoney, Michael Rooker, D.B. Sweeney, and Charlie Sheen. What a fucking cast.
That's a murderer's row.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. And that's going to go head-to-head with 42 from 2013. In 1947, Jackie Robinson becomes the first African-American to play in Major League Baseball in the modern era when he was signed by the Brooklyn Dodgers and faces considerable racism in the process. Directed by Brian Helgeland and written by Brian Helgeland, starring Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, T.R. Knight, Harrison Ford, Chris Maloney, Lucas Black, Alan Tudyk, and John C. McGinley. Go.
Harrison Ford, come on. He's out of his depth here.
Thank you. All right.
Doing the gruff like.
Here's what I had to say about this. Harrison Ford is not a character actor. Then why the hell would you hire him to play a character like Branch Rickey?
Exactly. He's just he's trying to do the grumbling thing, and he's trying to do the Tom Hanks thing from League of Their Own.
On 42, I call it the N-word drinking game. This will have you crawl on the floor drunk. Alan Tudyk had to have been uncomfortable with his role. I mean, hats off to him for performing it so assholey. I mean, he was horrible, but good on him for that. And
I feel like we're it seems like we're gonna put 8 Men Out through, and that's my pick. But 42, the Jackie Robinson story, when they finally got around to making a Jackie Robinson biopic, that's arguably one of the most important baseball stories to tell. It should have been a better movie. And there's nothing really wrong with it aside from what y'all talk.
I think Harrison Ford took away from it. I really do, because it is a neat story.
But beyond that, they try to hammer it into just such a stereotypical biopic, inspirational script, and it just, to me, doesn't work.
Yeah, and I love Chadwick Boseman.
He's fine in the role. Yeah,
I thought he was fine, and go ahead.
The
Todd.
Pee Wee Reese moment. We'll all wear 42 tomorrow, and they won't be able to tell us apart. Come on, that's a little
thick,
little thick,
yeah,
little thick. I think supposedly he did say something like that, but still, that
And 8 Men Out stands out on this list of 16 movies because almost without fail, these tell very inspirational stories about the power of baseball, blah, blah, blah. With a few exceptions, 8 Men Out being one of the most notable ones. This is a story about corruption.
Yeah.
And also a very important part of baseball history. I mean, that's one of the most interesting, interludes in baseball history. That 1919, was it? Black Sox scandal. It easily goes through for
and
me.
Players betting on themselves or betting against themselves has happened throughout baseball history, and this is one case. Ty Cobb bet against himself or bet on himself.
Yep.
And of course, the Pete Rose scandal, and I'm sure it's popped. Well, no, it's popped up in NFL recently. Players betting on themselves.
Right.
It's real, and there's a squirrel right outside the
I was going to
window.
wonder if the audience could hear this seemingly in heat squirrel right outside the window of our
He
studio.
is disagreeing with our brackets.
But the evils of capitalism come through here too, because you kind of sympathize with what the players are doing. The pitcher Eddie, who doesn't want to go through with the gambling initially, is doing it because he gets shitted by the owner Comiskey, who cheats him out of his bonus by he's going to get a bonus if he gets 30 wins, and he makes the manager sit him for the last 2 weeks so he can't get the 30th win.
Yeah, it's
and this is an era when players weren't making a lot of money. Most of them had jobs in the off season and that kind of thing.
The thing I like about 8 Men Out that I didn't like about The Babe, I didn't like about 61, I didn't like about Cobb. It had the feel of vintage baseball, and they got it right.
It does it better.
It was snappy. It felt dirty. It felt intimate because the stadiums, the seating, it was smaller seating. There were smaller crowds. They get the feel of baseball right better than probably most of the movies that we've talked about today, specific to their time period. I really enjoyed that, and
I agree.
Again, I go back to the fact that you've got a very young cast of up and comers who really.
Michael
really
Rook was
put on
terrific
some-
as Chick. I think that was an underrated performance.
Yeah, I think Rooker up until that point had done Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. I mean, he's good.
Oh, yeah.
So, and of course, we all know him, now from the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff and a few other films. But anyway, well, we've run well into over 45 minutes, so we're going to take a break and come back, and we're going to finish out this bracket. But before we go, we're going to say, let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back. are back. And when we come back from intermission, what do we like to do, Joey?
We like to drink beers and talk about drinking beers.
That's right. So we've had a few today. We've got Voodoo Ranger from
The juice, they have a few different varieties. This one is the Juicy Hazy IPA.
Juicy Hazy. Joey's got some Pluff Mud Porter from...
There's more of this to go around if someone wants to pour.
What's the name of the brewery?
Holy City.
Holy
in
City.
Charleston.
That's right. And then earlier I had a new anthem beer called Clapback.
That was pretty good.
That was good, yeah.
Galaxy Dry Hopped IPA, and I'm also drinking their Dive Bar right now, which is just a session beer. I gotta be ready to pitch later on tonight, so I'm gonna drink light. All right, so we're gonna jump into the next round of the brackets. This is gonna go a lot faster, folks. We promise, because we've talked about most of these movies, but we're gonna dive right in, and we're going with Bull Durham versus The Natural. Who wants to start?
Boy, this one's tough.
This one is really tough.
So, Bull Durham and the Natural are actually a great contrast in styles matchup, whereas Bull Durham is more of the realistic, let's look at the nitty-gritty, underground of baseball in the minor leagues and how tough it is, versus the Natural, which is pure myth-making. Mm-hmm. Joey, you have some thoughts? I can't pick yet.
Well, I was just, one of the things we were talking about during the intermission is that one of the things that I like most about this podcast is when I do the research for the movies, looking at what the other body of work that the directors and writers and actors have done. And the director of Bull Durham, his name escapes me right now. For some reason, I didn't write it down in my notes.
I've got it. Let me see. It's Bull Durham. You said Bull Durham?
Yeah, his body of work.
That is that's Ron Shelton.
Ron Shelton. His body of work is untouchable. I mean, especially in the sports genre, he did Tin Cup.
I've actually never seen that.
Another.
Tin Cup's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sports movie, and it just kind of specializes in this thing. He did White Men Can't Jump.
Okay.
Writer, director, which it strikes me as I say it out loud, might not be as good as I remember it being, but it was
For the
good.
time, it was something special.
Yeah, it's a great movie in my memory. Yeah, I agree with Todd. This one was tough for me. That mythology versus gritty realism. Anybody who's familiar with my own writing body of work knows that I tend more toward gritty realism, but I'm voting for The Natural, guys.
Oh.
This is my big upset. It's
Okay.
a dark horse in my bracket, and I like the way it mythologizes baseball. I just like it better than I like Bull Durham. I just do.
I'm going to go with Bull Durham. I like cynicism. I like flawed characters. And
They're both great. I mean, Bull Durham is a great movie.
For me, Bull Durham has it in spades. I've already said I don't really care for The Natural's just sappy idealism, but that's just me.
This is one of the few rooms that I'm ever in where I'm the least cynical person in the room. Maybe that's why I like hanging out with you guys. I don't know.
So it all comes down to me.
You're the tiebreaker.
Do we need a drum roll, gentlemen? Something?
No,
we don't need one. Okay. So I'm going to go with what I wrote down earlier today, which is Bull Durham.
Oh, okay.
I love The Natural, the myth making, but Bull Durham kind of revisit. I didn't rewatch it in full because I've seen it many times, but in revisiting some of the key scenes from that movie over the last couple days, the witty banter, the one guy on the downswing, the other guy on the upswing, the lack, even though I, as I've said earlier, I do think that sentimentality in this genre is perfectly fine. I think that in this case, though, this movie just sort of nails the realistic side of it while still being enjoyable and not so cynical that it's like depressing at the end, right?
Yep.
It still ends on kind of a high note. So
He gets the girl.
he gets the girl.
He doesn't get his major league career, but he gets the girl.
Okay.
Right. And then Meade, of course, you end up liking him by the end of the movie, and he's going off to the majors, and Crash is happy for him and all that good stuff. And so, I'm gonna have to go with Bull Durham.
All right. Jumping across the bracket, we're going to look at the Bad News Bears versus League of Their Own.
I like the Bad News Bears for better or for worse, and I say this without any sort of socio-political agenda. They don't make them like that anymore. It could have made a run here. A League of Their Own deserves a much higher seating. It is the only flaw in this movie for me is y'all talked about loving. Shawn talked about loving Tom Hanks's portrayal.
Yeah.
To me, it's a little one note. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of gruff and like
Yeah.
But as Todd pointed out, it's not unrealistic that there are guys like that. It's a great movie. It's a feel-good movie. It hits all the right notes. I'm putting League of Their Own through in my bracket.
A League of Their Own.
I was fascinated by how that whole chapter of baseball history and how seamlessly they did working in the fictional story with the real.
Yeah, if I didn't
women.
say A League of Their Own, Chelsea would come down from her assignment out of town and kick my ass.
I would. I respect that.
So
League of Their Own.
okay, so we are unanimous on League, and we will move on down to our.
It should be noted that Bad News Bears deserves its spot in the pantheon of baseball
absolutely
films.
it does.
Absolutely.
That's the
But
reason it was the number 2 seed.
It's a tough draw.
It is it spawned a total franchise.
What,
and
3 sequels? At least there's at
more
least
than
2.
that. Even I think
They go to Japan. There's
and-
Bad News Bears 2.
I remember the one where they went to the Astrodome.
Yeah,
Which one was that?
Yep, I can't remember either. And then there was the then of course a reboot. So, it does. Pat yourself on the back. It's a great film franchise. All right, so we're jumping down to the Sandlot versus Field of Dreams. I know mine.
Ooh.
As much as I love the Sandlot, sorry, Field of Dreams in a Wipeout.
Same.
Field of Dreams is just the iconic baseball movie to me in terms of it's got myth making, but it also has a little bit of realism mixed. It's that magical realism recipe, I guess you would call it, that really works for me. I love. There are just so many great scenes in there. I love the scene where Kevin Costner's character goes to the James Earl Jones character's apartment. Terrence Mann, and they have that little. He pretends to hold him up with his finger in his jacket or whatever, pretending it's a gun and getting him to come out.
Great stuff.
And then when Terrence Mann, actually acknowledges that he saw the same thing that Kevin Costner's character had seen at Fenway Park. And he says, "What did I see, Ray?" I don't know. I just love that stuff. So for me, Field of Dreams, and in a 20-point blowout.
Well, I'm going to say Field of Dreams as well. So Joey, your opinion is anecdotal.
Yeah, but I was going to vote the same way.
Okay.
The Sandlot, again, like Bad News Bears, deserves its spot in the pantheon of baseball movies.
Oh yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
But Field of Dreams kind of shocked me that it didn't come in as the number 1 overall seed, honestly. And it is arguably the baseball movie. Roger Ebert called it the kind of film that Frank Capra may have made if he were alive, in the 90s.
If you read some of those Rotten Tomatoes excerpt reviews, it is what we've talked about with the sentimentality. So some of the critics just aren't going to go
Heartless bastards.
Yep. So
all right. So moving on, then we're talking about 2 very different movies: Moneyball versus 8 Men Out.
I mean, I've already said that Moneyball is. I'll be honest. On a list of the top movies of the 21st century, it'd probably be in my top 20 to 30 list. I haven't actually done that list.
That's a strong statement.
I love that movie. I think it's a great film. Like an actual great film just outside of the genre. 8 Men Out is I like that movie a lot. It offers something different from some of the other films as well, but so does Moneyball, as we've talked about. And so for me, even though 8 Men Out is a worthy opponent, I've got to go with Moneyball.
Joey?
I feel like I'm going to be the deciding vote on this one, and I am still a little bit torn, so I'm going to defer to Shawn.
Oh, wow. That's a curveball. I'm going to go with 8 Men Out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go against you on that. I love Moneyball. And like you said, it's one of the rare films where we get to see the front office aspect of baseball. I like this one because we get to see the conflict of corruption. We get to see courtroom drama. And again, I fall back on that fantastic casting that was these guys. Some of these guys were not even stars at the time, and they turned in great performances and became great actors.
And now that I think about it, 8 Men Out in some ways is reminiscent of those noir boxing films that we talked about in the boxing episode. A similar sort of vibe there.
So I'm going to go with 8 Men Out.
Ooh. Here's my logic on this one. I think that Moneyball is a better film than 8 Men Out. I do think, however, there is a argument to be made that 8 Men Out is a better baseball movie than Moneyball. Moneyball is about analytics, which has had a decidedly, I think we can all agree, mixed outcome on the game itself. A very important baseball story to tell. I think that a more important baseball story to tell and a more compelling one is the 1919 Black Sox scandal. I'm going to throw a curveball here. I'm going to go with 8 Men Out.
Woo! Wow. Okay. All right. Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. Now, we've got some stuff to talk about. We have Bull Durham starring Kevin Costner against Field of Dreams starring
in the Final Four.
Kevin Costner. And we have League of Their Own, an ensemble cast, versus 8 Men Out, an ensemble cast. So let's start with League of Their Own and 8 Men Out.
Okay, I'm going to have to criticize y'all's choice because I think it would have been much closer between Moneyball and A League of Their Own.
Todd is
still
clearly butthurt.
That
Moneyball did not make it through.
I acknowledge it's a good movie.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
It's fine. But I'm going to... League of Their Own, to me, is the... 8 Men Out's a very good film for the reasons you guys gave. I definitely agree with your logic there. But to me, League of Their Own has more cultural currency as well, which I do think is important in considering these movies. People know, people that aren't even baseball fans, a lot of young girls from this era especially like this movie, even if they're not sports fans, because of the female empowerment aspect of it. And it's got feel good elements, but there's also sad moments too. So it has a good blend of drama in there. So anyway, I'm going to go with League of Their Own over 8 Men Out, which, good historical document, but maybe not as well-rounded. I
agree with everything that Todd just said. This is my pick.
I'm gonna say League as well. Granted that the 8 Men Out, again, I talk about the great casting. I talk about the authenticity of the feel of baseball.
It's arguably, I think, as far as the movies we watched for this episode, it gets the baseball part of it better than almost any of them.
But League of Their Own, it tells a great story. Again, falling back to what I said earlier about the passing the Bechdel test in spades. Some great characters, some great performances. Not just I mentioned Tom Hanks, but we were in such a rush to get through some of these other performances, not even just the big stars, were great, and you've got family treachery, the how dare you, how could you,
the sister versus sister rather than the brother versus brother angle,
so there's some fun stuff in there, and of course it should be noted also that the film got rebooted as a TV series on Amazon. I think it's lasted 1.5 seasons.
I didn't even know about that.
I didn't either.
Have you seen any of it?
Yeah, it's not bad. They introduce African American characters into the mix as well, which is something that was not part of the film.
In real history, baseball itself was still segregated.
It was. These are girls that are trying to play in the girls league, so they had to go and form their own or something. I don't know how
whatever it was called, the girls league. Were there black players in there in real life?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm sure they took great liberties with that. But we're talking about this film.
As one should when writing historical fiction.
But we're talking about this film, and we've all decided that A League of Their Own is going to advance to the finals to face the winner of Bull Durham versus Field of Dreams.
Okay.
Anybody wish to weigh in on this one?
Again, gritty realism versus mythology, except that you could argue that the gritty realism in this case is a dressed down romantic comedy.
Okay.
That's an argument there.
I'm a bit torn on this one. What are you guys voting?
Well, I'm gonna go with Field of Dreams. You have contrasting styles here, as you noted, but I just have to go with what I revisit more frequently, which I probably watch Field of Dreams at least once every 2 years, let's say. I didn't rewatch it for this because I've seen it probably within the last 4 or 5 months. It's just one that hits the right note for me. I get the man blubbering is just always there, even though it, maybe some people would roll their eyes at it. Dad, you want to have a catch? That's just, come on. At the very end, when you see the line of the cars coming down to the speech that James Earl Jones gives about
it's baseball, Ray.
Yeah,
baseball.
Yes. I mean, come on.
I'm going to go with Field of Dreams, too. I'll make it easy on you, Joey. I'm going with Field of Dreams. It's a magical movie. We're talking about baseball, but we're also talking about movies and movie magic, and I think that Field of Dreams hits it. So
I think I ultimately would have gone there, too.
Okay. All right, so now, oh, God. Field of Dreams versus League of Their Own.
Whew, tough. Well, I'll go ahead and do that. Maybe I'm jumping ahead. My original final was Field of Dreams against Moneyball. So I had League of Their Own going out earlier. That's not a knock on League of Their Own, but I'm going to have to go with Field of Dreams. To me, that's the ultimate baseball film in terms of capturing the magical quality of it, the American pastime element of it. As compelling as League of Their Own is, as great as it is, to me, Field of Dreams just is, like I said, the ultimate baseball movie. We even have now the Field of Dreams game in Major League Baseball, which was amazing watching in the very first of those games to be played, a walk-off home run going into the cornfield. I mean, so Field of Dreams for me.
Joey, you're the guest. You've got to go.
Well, to me, the deciding factor here because we're not just looking at which is the better film. We're looking at which is the better baseball movie. And the crossover, League of Their Own has become a cultural touchstone. Everyone knows it. Even me, who hadn't seen it until earlier this week, was familiar with it.
Right.
There's no crying in baseball, all that, But Field of Dreams, like you said, is the quintessential baseball movie. And for me, the deciding factor was the fact that its relevance has actually crossed over out of the silver screen onto the actual baseball field. Major League Baseball itself has embraced this movie. I'm going to vote Field of Dreams as my champion. Coming out of the number 5 slot. Should have been ranked higher than that.
It's unanimous, folks. Field of Dreams is the number 1 baseball movie according to Cinema Chop Shop. And if you don't like it, you can add us on social media. Cinema Chop Shop, everywhere you go.
At me.
Hit us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can email us, cinemachopshop@gmail.com. You can watch an audio presentation of this episode on YouTube, Cinema Chop Shop Podcast. Sorry for being away for so freaking long, but I think we're going to get it back on track. We've got some schedules that have eased up for some of our guests, and we've got some cool episode ideas. Joey, what do you want to say?
I just want to say one last thing.
What do you want to say?
If this had been a football movies episode or a basketball movies episode.
I was thinking about this earlier. There are not that many good football movies.
What I was going to say is I think that I would prefer the gritty, realistic approach to a football movie or a basketball movie. Mm-hmm. But something about baseball, with all that, father and son crap and all the nostalgia, something about it just makes me gravitate toward the mythical and the fantastical and the sentimental, and that's what separates baseball from other sports, I think.
I do have one question. Did either of you have anything that was on your individual brackets that did not happen in our communal?
The Natural went further in my bracket, I think, than it did.
The Natural went further than I thought it would. Guys, I want to thank you both for coming in and doing the show. Staying in for extra innings. Joey, you got anything you want to plug?
Not at the moment.
Todd?
No plugs at the moment, no.
Any movies that everybody needs to go watch?
I don't know if it's a good movie, but Beau is Afraid is an extremely interesting movie, and I was not bored at any point in the 3 hours. It's 3 hours long, so fair warning.
Willikers.
And some people may, lose interest, but it kept me interested. I don't know what the hell it was about, other than maybe some Freudian stuff in there. But a movie that makes me think is a movie that I think is worth seeing.
JoJo?
I'm going to go in the other direction. I just saw Cocaine Bear.
Yes!
And don't have much to say about it other than that it is exactly what you think it is.
Okay. I will equate Cocaine Bear to another recommendation, which is Renfield. It's not a great movie, but it's a fun movie. You'll have a good time. I think it was a lot of fun. And then, of course, the other one we were just talking about off mic during intermission, Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
Fun movie. Finally, they got a D&D movie out there that people can watch that are fans of the game or not fans of the game. Everyone gets a cookie at the end. Plus, you get a Tame Impala song during the ending credits. Thank you, the listener, for legging it out. Thanks for sticking around and waiting patiently for the next episode. We promise it will not be this long until the next one. And Joey is pointing at something.
Oh, I was just putting my finger in the air because I was about to start singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
I think we have to pay rights on that. Or we will invoke the ghost of Harry Carey. So, without further ado, we're going to thank you, the listener, and please remember to watch, chop, retrofit.